Predator Killer of Killers is one of the greatest stories ever told regarding the Yautja, reaching the heights of the original that started the entire franchise. But beneath the surface lies something way bigger. The ending hides a secret twist linked to Prey, subtle callbacks to Predator 2, a new hierarchy of hunters, and even builds towards Alien vs Predator. So in this video we're diving into the hidden lore and how this movie changes the Predator timeline forever. The movie begins with a passage from the Yautja Codex. Now this is the first time we get a definitive canonical name drop of the Yautja in Predator movies. Nonetheless, the passage reads, "Go forth amongst the stars and seek only the strongest prey. They shall be your trophy. Become the killer of killers," with the first hunt taking us to Earth 841 AD. Here we meet Ursa, a powerful Valkyrie of the seas, reminding her son that they do not fight for gold, but rather because their enemy still lives. This immediately sets up the overarching theme of the movie as we get an understanding as to how the Vikings and the Yautja parallel each other. The most obvious connection is their love for fighting. The Yautja live for the hunt. Fighting stronger enemies is what makes them feel alive, and for the Vikings it was the same. However, both also collect a kind of trophy for their respective hunts. Whilst a predator takes the skull and spine of those they have defeated, a Viking would ransack their belongings, take their gold, their land, their slaves. And much like how the Yautja Codex reads regarding setting across the stars in search of a good hunt, the Vikings would do the same. Just rather than in a spaceship, they'd do so in a boat across the sea. But perhaps the biggest comparison is the pride and honor they both take in death. For the Vikings, they believed that if a warrior died bravely in battle, the Valkyries would come down from the skies and carry their soul to Valhalla, where they would feast and fight alongside other great warriors for all eternity. But only those who showed courage and strength in life could enter. In comparison, the Yautja's world isn't so different. For them, the hunt is sacred. A predator lives to face danger and defeat powerful enemies. The more dangerous the prey, the greater the honor. Even in death, a Yautja who dies fighting earns respect from their clan. To them, dying in a weak or shameful way is far worse than actual death itself. Furthermore, attacking the unarmed and vulnerable goes against this honor for both cultures. We then witness a raid fight that can only be described as perfect in almost every way, with Ursa showcasing why she is an incredible fighter, where eventually she talks to the last survivor of the raid in search of their chieftain Zoran. He explains to Ursa's son, when tasked with finishing him off, that the Allfather will not let him into Valhalla for killing an unarmed prisoner. In spite of this, Ursa does so anyway after Anders hesitates. Little do they realize though that this indirectly sealed their fates as a Yautja ship then flies overhead. That's when we flash back to Ursa's father's death, reminding us what this story is really about at its core. He tells Zoran to kill him as he has won that honor, but to free his daughter. And despite it all, Zoran forces Ursa to take part in her own father's death, placing her hand on the dagger that ends his life. But right before that happens, her father asks Ursa to avenge him, marking her with his own blood. That moment created a monster inside of her, a rage so deep that the only way to kill it is with revenge. But little does she realize that she will soon learn that the opposite is in fact true. Because as Ursa storms Zoran's camp, it's her son who lands the finishing blow, ending the tyrant once and for all. But just as victory hits, he gets blasted by a predator pulse shot, the same predator who's been watching the entire massacre unfold from the shadows. Now, based on its absurd size, this predator looks to be a super predator from Predators. They are bulkier and more muscular than the mainstream predators and have a reptilian-like skin almost. The most important thing though is that they care less about honor when killing and more about the kill itself and the trophies that come with it, which is in direct contrast to the usual Yautja. They also constantly try to improve themselves to become better killers, and that is why they use the most dangerous of prey in order to improve their technology and tactics. Now this all ties back to Ursa in a massive way because yeah, revenge may feel like justice, but in most moral codes it's a poison. Once it starts, it never stops. One kill leads to another until you're trapped in a cycle of blood that consumes everyone. And as a result, your sense of honor gets corrupted and fueled by anger. Thus, Ursa facing a super predator highlights that they are two sides of the same coin. But to no one's surprise, the Yautja makes light work of everyone, with Ursa being sent outside via its pulse cannon arm, which she's able to survive by soaking up most of the impact with her shield. In spite of this, she's sent sliding into the icy waters below whilst the rest of the building collapses. She's able to find a small pocket of air she can breathe through to survive as the Yautja walks across the lake. However, just like Dutch in Predator 1, Ursa is able to stay hidden from him, but where he used mud to mask his body heat, her body is being cooled down by the freezing cold waters. Now we see the super predator live up to its name as being more aggressive than their smaller cousins because it goes hell-bent on trying to find her, blasting everything away in its path. But when the coast is clear, Ursa begins her counterattack. She's able to wrap an anchor around the Yautja's arm, sending them both into the water. Rather than letting it drown though, it pulls her down with him. In spite of this, she's able to trick the Yautja into blasting her again, sending her up and out to land, and him backwards into the anchor and to its death. But it's not all good news, because when Ursa finally finds her son, Anders is bleeding out. And here is a detail that I think most people missed. During the final battle, the water washes away the blood her father marked her with. That blood represented his legacy, his pain, and the revenge he passed onto her. But now it's gone, because in that moment, vengeance is over, and what's left is just a mother holding her dying son. Yes, the war may be won, but the cost was unbearable. Ursa realizes that revenge isn't the way, and that mindless killing brings only more suffering. Thus, she uses the snow to wipe away his red markings, metaphorically putting an end to the cycle of violence she has lived. Now, Anders most likely went to Valhalla here for fighting honourably in battle like a warrior and for not killing the guy from earlier when he was defenseless. Now you see, those who don't go to Valhalla go to Helheim for all eternity. And whilst she doesn't die here, Ursa still gets what's coming for her for not killing with honour. You see, Helheim is a place of endless cold. And what happens to her? Well, not only does Ursa fight in the freezing cold waters surrounded by snow and ice, but Yautja returns to put her into cryosleep, where she wakes up over 1,000 years later, only to then be put into cryosleep again. She is quite literally sentenced to a life of eternal cold. However, she's not alone in this, bringing me to Japan. It's 1609, where a young samurai named Kenji, training with his brother, slashes at falling leaves, before it then cuts to the two of them in a trainee combat catching a leaf midair. The two are forced into combat against each other to prove their worth of standing beside the shogun, who is their father. However, our main character refuses and sheaths his katana. In spite of this, his brother attacks, scared of being a disappointment. This is another example of attacking someone who is defenseless, or at least in this case, not a worthy opponent. Now again, the samurai code and the Yautja code share parallels. The samurai lived by Bushido, a rigid moral code built on loyalty, courage, discipline, and above all, honor. To break it was to bring shame not just to yourself, but to an entire lineage. Even seppuku was considered the ultimate act of honor. If a warrior failed in duty, was defeated, or brought shame, seppuku allowed them to die with dignity, reclaiming their honor through death. And well, believe it or not, that is exactly what the Yautja live by as well. To them, dying in battle isn't failure, it is glory. But living in shame, running from a fight, that is the ultimate disgrace. That's why, like in the original Predator from 1987, wounded or defeated Yautja self-destruct, not out of rage, but out of honor. However, it goes even deeper, into the literal weapons themselves. For the samurai, the katana wasn't just a blade, it was the soul of the warrior, forged with care and passed down through generations. The way you wielded your sword revealed who you were, and for the Yautja, it's the same principle. Each weapon is customized, mastered, and respected. Killer of Killers represents this idea perfectly. Each predator fights in a different way. The one versus Ursa was missing an arm, but mounted a weapon there instead. Against the samurai, the predator used spears and chains. And then lastly, in the Bullet, we saw him use aerial combat combat and take not the skulls of his enemies as trophies, but the engines. Every predator fights in a way that reflects their personality and soul. However, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here, because the story in Japan reveals that Kenji ran away after refusing to kill his brother due to his empathy and nature, only for him to return 20 years later, this time as a ninja to finally prove his worth. Now, whilst being a samurai is about the why of killing, the honor associated with it, a ninja is all about the how. It's less about a moral code and more about getting the job done. In essence, they are the two sides that make up a predator. We then see Kenji arrive under a log, using a blow dart to kill a samurai taking a piss before infiltrating further. He very nearly goes unnoticed the entire way, killing those on watch before a bell is rang alerting others that they are under attack. Now, much like a predator, he picks them off one by one without even being seen before revealing himself to his true target, his brother. In the end, his brother adorns the Shogun armor, but ultimately falls to what is assumed to be his death due to the barrier being weakened via their father slicing at it with a blade before their duel 20 years ago. Which is when Kenji looks at the painting of their father in disgust, as he is what ultimately forced the two apart and even killed them now. But what follows is an insane shot of the predator reaching from within the father, symbolizing him as the true killer as he tears through the painting. We then get to see Kenji's ninja skills saving his ass. He's able to know an attack is coming based on just a single tiny light despite the predator being invisible, and when the predator walks across the roof above him, he's able to tell where his foot is using the sound, stabbing it. He also uses a smoke bomb to force the predator's shape to appear within the cloud. But in spite of this, as Kenji jumps into the river below, he's met with his brother, who tries to continue their fight. However, the predator joins the party, hunting its prey. That's when they both realize that this isn't what they were meant to become. Their father taught them that true strength comes from dominance, from killing to outlast the other. But in that moment, standing side by side against a predator, they see the truth. Their father's obsession with power through conflict was wrong, because it blinded him to the one thing stronger than any blade or technique: brotherhood. Fighting each other only weakened them, which is when one of the Yautja's minds gets pulled into their gauntlet, seemingly killing it. Now, these may look a bit familiar to you, as they are the same ones used by the feral predator in Prey. But from there, the two brothers continue their duel, but in a callback to the beginning, a leaf gets stuck onto the now invisible predator, with them both slicing at it, and subsequently the predator as well, killing it. But unfortunately, one of them dies in the process from their wounds. Now, in the end, Kenji, who came to prove his worth with a kill, like a Yautja, ends up deciding against it, ending a cycle of violence just like Ursa. Taking us to 1941 Florida. Here, a young man named Torres who dreams of being a pilot breaks down and calls his dad over to help him fix it. Turns out he flooded the engine. However, his dad refuses to fix it. He's done bailing out his son, who has now been drafted into the war. He's got a rickety ass plane that he can't fix up because he's not a mechanic, and continues asking someone else to fix it for him. However, his superior responds by asking what flying means to him. This is Torres' equivalent of the hunt. He doesn't quite understand what it truly means to fly yet, but he soon will, as that is when a predator attacks in the air, taking away other planes' engines. That's what this Yautja's weapon does. Once Torres' ally turns on his plane's engine, it immediately activates and homes in on it. And so, in order to warn the aces, Torres jumps in his plane despite it barely being able to start. Now, as the fight goes on, his plane actually falls apart more and more. First, he has to replace one lever with a wrench, then he has to set his plane up in a way that allows him to stand on the wing and kick off his burning engine, which is what alerts him to the fact that the predator follows heat. Throughout the entire story, Torres displays a level of ingenuity to succeed and protect, resulting in him flying high into the atmosphere to cool their engine and turn them off to make themselves invisible. In the end though, Vandy sacrifices himself. Sorta. He didn't really have much of a choice, but he gave Torres a split second of time to begin his counterattack. His element of surprise though doesn't last long. However, after flying the Predator through enemy territory, resulting in it being shot at with anti-air guns, Torres realizes after looking at a picture of his father that he needs to flood the engines. From there, he abandons ship, or plane I suppose, tricking the Predator into killing itself. Unfortunately for him though, this would only be the beginning, as a Yautja freight ship appears and takes him away, resulting in Torres and the others being on board the ship together, with all three just coming out of cryosleep. From there, they're thrown into a gladiatorial arena in a tournament to the death to determine the killer of killers, which is when the warlord of this region makes his presence known. Now, this guy means business. We can see that his cape is made of what seems to be xenomorph spines, as you can even see the bladed tip at the end of the tail. He then gives each fighter a weapon from their tribe, with Ursa getting a Viking axe, Kenji a katana, and Torres a 17th century flintlock pistol. Now, this is one of the most important weapons in the entirety of Predator lore. You see, it belonged to Raphael Adolini and gives us an idea of when this big gladiator battle takes place. Now, chronologically, this gun first appears in Prey. In 1719, the Italian gunslinger Raphael Adolini was working as a translator for a group of French voyagers, but things went south pretty fast. The feral Yautja wiped them out and left Adolini badly wounded. That's when he crossed paths with Naru. In a brief alliance of survival, Adolini taught her how to load and fire his flintlock pistol in exchange for her treating his injuries. But the fight wasn't over. After Adolini and Naru's brother were killed, Naru confronted the feral Yautja head-on. Using the skills she had just learned and the Predator's own technology against it, she claimed both its head and the pistol. Then fast forward nearly 300 years later to 1997 and the events of Predator 2. In Los Angeles, the City Hunter, a member of Greyback's clan, went on a brutal killing spree, but this time his prey was being hunted as well by LAPD Lieutenant Mike Harrigan. Harrigan eventually chased the Yautja deep into the clan's hidden mothership and killed him with his own smart disc. That's when the rest of his clan appeared, but instead of killing him, Greyback stepped forward, acknowledged his victory, and tossed him a trophy, Adolini's flintlock pistol. And so this means one of two things. One, this battle takes place prior to Predator 2, sometime between 1941 and 1997. Or it's after, and for whatever reason, they took the pistol back from Harrigan. I don't know why they'd do this, and I don't know why he was given a gift for killing Yautja in the first place and all the other poor souls got abducted, but it is what it is. Now here we get a great look of Yautja Prime, their homeworld, which connects directly back to Prey, because the feral predator actually comes from a specific region of Yautja Prime, one that is hot, barren, and desert-like. That harsh environment explained why it looked so different from the others, and based on what we see here, plus the fact that the mines were similar and that they had the flintlock pistol, I'd bet that this is the exact region of the planet that we're dealing with. Nonetheless, as the battle to declare the killer of killers commences, Ursa goes straight for the kill. However, the others try and find a way around this, even if they have a collar around their neck ready to blow at any opportunity. It's not until Ursa sees her son in Torres that she remembers the pain that comes with the cycle of violence and how she wants to put an end to that. Regardless, the warlord predator then releases an alien on the three human killers, which isn't anything new. We know that the Yautja have used other aliens in their hunts, as seen in Predators with the Hellhounds, and so it eats Torres. Nonetheless, Ursa and Kenji now work together to slay the beast as it's then taken back indoors. However, inside, Torres is still alive, and well, he manages to get himself out of its stomach using a gauntlet of a predator that the beast had previously eaten. However, once the warlord realizes that Ursa and Kenji won't fight, he activates their self-destruction collars. Thankfully, Torres shows his ingenuity yet again, using the gauntlet he stole to deactivate and remove them. That's when he hijacks the hoverbike, and together they head straight for the warlord's ship, who makes light work of them. My guy doesn't even break a sweat because, let's be honest, if he really wanted to, he could have killed these guys in seconds. Because let's not forget, he has clearly faced down many a xenomorph in his time. But whilst Ursa and Kenji distract him, Kenji's able to get the ship up and running, again showing that ingenuity and that he may actually understand the mechanics more than anyone else, despite what he thought. Thus, they're able to escape, but it's not all good news, as Ursa sacrifices herself to free the ship of a chain that's latched itself onto it. However, before she does so, she warns the two men not to avenge her. Unfortunately though, it's all a bit short-lived, because not only does their escape see them be met with an entire platoon of Yautja warships, but Ursa is put straight back on the ice to be used in a Killer of Killers tournament once again. As I said, she is in Helheim now, eternal coldness, taken into a huge cryopod warehouse. Now, fun fact, when this movie was in production, its working title was Warehouse, likely named after this scene, because inside this place is thousands upon thousands of cryo chambers, each one with a Yautja killer inside. However, the first we see is this handsome chap. Now, this looks a lot like a tetrabrachial humanoid, a species native to the planet UE753 in the Caos Borealis system. They originate from the Fire and Stone comics, which follow on from the events of Prometheus. Now, whilst these comics specifically are not canon, when we look into the humanoid's origins, it does link into the Alien vs Predator universe being built for the franchise. You see, the tetrabrachial humanoids live in what can only be described as a Bronze Age equivalent. Physically, they stand toe-to-toe with the Yautja in terms of real strength, despite their technology being light years behind. One Yautja, in fact, named Ahab, once conducted a hunt on this planet, resulting in him losing an eye. What he found, though, was the same engineered cave paintings that Dr. Elizabeth Shaw once did, hinting at the fact that the tetrabrachial humanoids are also an engineer creation. Seeing this painting in person made Ahab obsess over the idea of collecting a Malakach skull for himself as the ultimate trophy. But here's where things get even more insane, because all signs point to Predator Badlands being the piece that fully bridges the Predator and Alien franchises back together again. Let's start with the obvious, the Weyland-Yutani logo, the same corporation from Alien who will do anything to weaponize the xenomorphs. Here we have one of their synthetics teaming up with Dek, the main Yautja of the movie, which raises one question: what are they really doing out there? If they're sending synthetics into Yautja hunting grounds, it all starts piecing together. You see, Fede Alvarez, who directed Alien Romulus, straight up said the next AVP crossover won't announce itself. What he means by this is that you'll be watching a Predator movie and then suddenly, bam, a xenomorph appears. And even if that's not the case with Badlands, seeing the skills Dek has and his desire to hunt dangerous beings, I'm pretty sure that Wei will try and coerce him into hunting the ultimate life form for their good. And so all in all, this means that Killer of Killers could secretly be the first act of a new AVP saga, because you can 100% bet your bottom dollar, bet your entire mortgage if you want, that inside one of these cryopods is a xenomorph. Because Killer of Killers may be more linked to Badlands than you think. You see, the films were developed at the exact same time. Dan Trachtenberg explained how some of the Predator vehicles and tech from the two films are similar, but he also said that in terms of narrative connections, you know, who's to say? Now, the following cryopod then features a white male, who you would automatically assume to be Dutch, but let's be honest, my guy would and should be a lot more buff if so. Thus, it's probably left ambiguous on purpose as to not take away from the main cameo in all the cryopods, Naru. That's right, following the events of Prey, the Yautja returned for her. This is why Torres was able to use the flintlock pistol. Now, this was actually foreshadowed all the way back in 2022 with Prey's credits, believe it or not. In it, we see a cave painting style recreation of the movie, as well as what happens after. Naru returns with the Yautja's head before a Predator ship then descends from the sky. We now know that it came back to take her away to fight as a Killer of Killers. Now, what the hell does all this mean for Prey 2? Well, at an event screening of the movie, Dan Trachtenberg said this regarding Naru's cameo. Following Prey's success, whilst trying to come up with what to do next, he came up with 3 ideas: Killer of Killers, Badlands, and one other cool thing, which we will inevitably see play out in Prey 2 with Naru. But the question on everybody's mind is why? Why did these Yautja abduct Yautja killers and not honor them like usual? Well, we know that certain Yautja clans act differently, like the super predators we mentioned earlier, who kidnapped dangerous humans from Earth and transported them to a foreign world as part of a big game hunt in Predators. Here's the twist. This time, it's not just one clan. The Grendel King, the massive predator warlord, seems to rule over a coalition of different Yautja clans. Some are honor-bound, like the OGs from Predator 1 and 2, and others like the super predators. And so So all in all, what did you guys think of Killer of Killers? Let me know in the comment section down below. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and ding that notification bell, as we've got loads more great content coming your way. But in the meantime, you can check this video out on your screen right now.